Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with the author of Dicks I've Met Online, exploring self-discovery through uncomfortable experiences with Bren Marrick. Her memoir uses humor and candid storytelling to explore patterns of self-discovery, reinvention, and emotional awareness through lived experience. Rather than focusing on dating itself, her work examines what relationships and personal choices reveal about self-worth, growth, and the moments that force us to stop avoiding ourselves. She brings a perspective shaped by midlife transition, emotional intelligence, and reflection on modern relationships. She didn't set out to tell a story like this. She set out to tell the truth about what happens when the life you built no longer fits, the quiet courage it takes to open doors that you thought would stay closed, and the unexpected humor you find while figuring it out. It's quite a story. Enjoy this interview.
Bren, thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today. I'm looking forward to getting into your story and the book. So again, thank you so much.
I'm excited to be here, too, with you.
So let's begin our journey. Before we get into your life and the work that you put out into the world, I want to ask you this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, changing the world. How did you get through that time period, and how has it affected the way that you do things today?
I don't think it changed what I'm doing today, other than when I cough and someone else coughs, I think I take a little bit more notice. But at that point, it was my son and I, and we have a really good relationship, and so it was kind of an adventure for us as far as, going out into the world with our mask and shopping and, just all the things that were going on. We kind of supported each other. So, if there was anyone else I could go through, or if I had to choose someone, he was the best one to go through that time together. So I think we supported each other through that.
So let's get into the book. Let's get into what you're doing. I want to do this. I want to begin with talking about how the book came about. What was it that impelled you to say, I'm going to put my story out into the world?
Never would I ever have said I would put my story into the world. I think we'll get into kind of the topic of the book, but I had gone through a period where I was doing online dating, and, we all talk about those dick pics that we get, and I had over 1,000. And so I was always laughing and thinking, I'm going to put a book together with all these pictures. And so that was something, I had mentioned to folks and things like that. But then the whole experience that I went through, it was more than just the dating. It was really figuring out who I was, what I wanted, and all that. And as I started talking with other women, I found that my story resonated with them. There were things going on in their lives. And I just felt like it was something that I wanted to share with folks, because I saw that there was a need for people to talk. And that was one thing I didn't have, is someone to share how I was feeling, what I was going through, what I was thinking. And, that just kind of compelled me to say, okay, let me put those dick pics aside for a moment and just share what I had gone through.
On a surface level, I understand technology and reality enough. Why in anyone's right mind, whether you're male or female, would you send a picture of your naked body over to somebody? There's a myriad of ways that it's going into the cloud. There's a myriad of ways that it can get redistributed. Are people that stupid?
Well, you know what? I mean, that's one thing to consider. The other thing that, and I have this one book, and I am working on the second book with these pictures. My thought, or what I was wondering is, when a guy goes through and takes pictures, what is he thinking when he says, this is the one? What is he thinking? Why did he pick that picture, and what does he think he's going to get from it? Does he think that a woman is going to say, oh my God, I need him this second right now, or oh my God, this is something I can't be without, or some of the pictures are so bizarre. And that's part of the thing is, what does a man think when he sees a picture, and what does a woman think when she sees, the picture? And I think most times they don't connect. They're not aligned.
Well, I think that just illuminates the difference between men and women. I'm always surprised at how vastly different we think and the way we perceive the world. It's almost a surprise to me sometimes that we continue to procreate and populate the planet based on the fact that we literally have such a little understanding of who we are as people.
Okay, are you going to admit to it? Have you ever taken a picture of yourself?
Not once.
Not once? I have. So, it was just kind of like, I said, I wanted to understand. So I said, let me take a picture. And, and I was like, it looks good to me. I mean, I don't know, what good or bad or whatever. I was like, but I'm not going to send this to anybody. And I deleted it. But I just wanted to understand. I'm like, well, what, is there something that you would, consider, think about, feel once you took that picture? And I just didn't see it. And it's funny because when, you talk to other women, now I would say no one has a collection as extensive as I have. But women have it, and it's. We don't talk about, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen. It's all like we're laughing, or we're cringing, or it's something. But I don't think it's getting the purpose that the man who sent it had envisioned.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's obvious about them doing it, is that they don't understand women. And I think too, there's a psychological decorum that is just absolutely anterior to anything that I would think. I mean, I would imagine that if you're dating, you would want to slowly unwrap the gift. You wouldn't want to jump in, do it immediately. You don't know who this person is. I just think that the caliber of woman that would see that and be like, oh yeah, that's the guy I'm going to marry, that says a lot about both of the people. And I wouldn't imagine that would be the level and bedrock of a relationship that anybody would think is going to last or have real substance.
No, I mean, but you have to think about Playboy magazine. I mean, men love to see the woman's body, and I guess, they feel there's a reciprocal. I mean, women like a man who has muscles. I mean, there's that kind of thing, but I think a lot of it has, you associate it with strength or, power or things like that. Getting a picture of the penis, and like I said, most times it's not like, okay, this is the Adonis of penises. Some of them are really bizarre. But the whole thing was, in my book, it's not really about dating and looking for the person. It was more, I was dating for validation. I was going through issues with my then husband, and he had given me a hall pass. And so I was out there, so the thing is, the people that I were meeting wasn't necessarily, Match.com. It was, other sites where the intent was more a sexual relationship or a sexual meeting, and not necessarily a long-term relationship.
So talk to me a little bit about, it sounds like this whole adventure that you went on, or this level of self-discovery was kind of unexpected. How did you go from getting these pictures that completely, added up and blew you away to all these levels of self-discovery and kind of the journey that it turned out to be? How did all of that kind of shift from that into a more deeper place that you put into the book?
Well, so the book is, it addresses these things. So what had happened is, like I said, I needed to feel my worth. It's that kind of thing where we go through life and we say, gee, I wish, we had more intimate relations. I wish, that he would pay more attention, or I wish, all those things that you kind of put aside, and say it's not that bad, but it got to a point where it was that bad, and we couldn't resolve it. But he didn't want to get a divorce. He was like, I'm happy. If you think you need more, go and get more. And so I was just trying to figure out what it was. What is it that I want? What is it that I need? And so I didn't want to have anything that was committal. You know, I just wanted to say, hey, does someone find me attractive, sexy, you know, desirable? And the pictures were kind of a part of all of that I encountered, in addition to all these sexual preferences and you know, things that existed out in the world that I had. It was like an underground, you know. Like one of the first sites that I went on was oh my gosh, now I'm blanking. But you know, I went on and I found that so many people were unhappy. You know, I was looking to say, hey, you know, let me talk to folks. And they were just telling me about how, you know, they're not happy with their wives and they're not, you know, this and that. And I was like, oh, my gosh. Oh, Ashley Madison. I'm sorry. It came to me. So, you know, that's one where you're, you know, discreet affairs. And, you know, it was sad. You know, you go to these parties, you hear the neighbors, everybody's talking about how wonderful this and that, and they're all full of shit. You know, you find out after, this one's doing that and the other thing, and no one's really, you know, coming forward and really saying what's happening. So, you know, these dick pics were kind of a side thing of just meeting people, finding out what people, you know, were into, what they were talking about, what I wanted, what I desired, what it was that really would make me happy at the end of the day, because that's what it was. I was thinking, in 20 years, am I going to look back and say, okay, you know, my life was okay, you know, and I'm good with it, or is there something that needs to change? And what I found is I said I need to be happy. I need something that's going to make me happy, and that wasn't working in the current marriage. It wasn't the sexual part of it. It wasn't, you know, people telling me that I was desirable. It was really everything, being true to myself and feeling confident and feeling, you know, that, you know, what I wanted out of life is what I deserved.
So my question to you is this, you know, there's been this debate, there's been all this speculation for years, even going on decades now, about online dating. You know, there's this organic way of running into people. There's this online way. Now there's increased AI metrics. Right, as you think about what you went through and writing this book and putting it out into the world, where are you at with all this? What do you think is the best way for human beings in 2026 to meet and fall in love and have the best case scenario happen?
I think it has to go back to the basics. You know, when you go online, it's like a menu, you know? I mean, when you know, you were growing up, you were in high school, college, you know, started working, you met the people that you bumped into that had similar interests that someone introduced you to. Now you go online, you say, I want them to be certain height, certain weight, certain occupation, have certain hobbies, live within a certain distance. I mean, all ethnicity, you know, religion, all these things. And all of a sudden, you know, you get 100 choices or whatever it is. I mean, maybe 101, that one that because you picked one thing that, you know, excluded them would have been the perfect person. So I think it's making us define things so specific that we're really missing out the people that we would, you know, meet organically and really, you know, find the best match that we can find. You know, that I put 20 miles and someone lives 22. I mean, you know, things like that. So, I mean, I would say, you know, getting into groups, getting into hobbies, getting into things like that are a better way of meeting someone. Does it expand your potential? Maybe. Does it benefit in the long run? I don't know. I just find that it seems too prescriptive when we go onto these sites.
I think so too. I think that's a part of, you know, the modern living model that we're in right now. Do you know anybody in your life that has successfully met people online and had happily ever after?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, hearing about someone 20 years ago, meeting someone, and, when online dating was first started and they met someone, and it was like they were the novelty. I think it's happening more and more today, but because it's like the only option that people are finding. I mean, my daughter met her husband on, online dating. My son, it's become more common. It's just like, okay, that's how you meet people. So I don't know if it's the better way. It's the more convenient way, and perhaps you meet someone that you wouldn't have otherwise met. But I don't know if it's the only way. Maybe that and kind of the old-fashioned. I go to the museum and I happen to meet someone who's also interested in art.
So, what's been the reaction? What kind of letters? What kind of responses have you been getting? From
the book, as far as the memoir?
Yeah, as far as the journey you went on and what you put out there.
So, while part of the, I guess, initial reluctance to write the book is that I do share some intimate things. Now, it's not pornography or anything, but I do share, I met people and some of the things that I did. And so I was afraid that the reactions that I would get would be, kind of condescending, what a whore, how can you do that? What kind of person are you? I mean, I'm a mom. I have my own business. I did the PTA. I did all this stuff. I'm just your neighbor. I'm just that regular person. And I was afraid that if I, came out with this story, people would, evaluate me in a way that I wasn't comfortable with. But what I have found is that the women who've gotten back to me to say, what they thought of the story is it really resonated as far as how they felt, what they were dealing with, none of the stuff having to do with sex, but more of not feeling valued, not being happy, settling with things that maybe that they weren't, necessarily happy in doing, but, why ruin something when you don't know what's on the other side? Sometimes being unhappy is better than being alone. So it was a way of people just saying, it made me think about things. I shared it with my husband because it was a way of sharing, what people were feeling. So I've gotten such a positive response, more than I ever envisioned.
So I got to know, in the annals of love stories that we're inundated with from the beginning of time, via, songs and TV and music and paintings, what is your favorite love story?
Love story. Oh my goodness. I always, it's not necessarily a love story. Let's see. It's kind of, like the movie Love Story, things like that. Those old ones where, you cut out and, all right, I'll just admit to it. I love the Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
I truly love that. I'm kind of a closet Hallmark movie fan. I just like those ones that make you feel good at the end, where it's like, okay, you have that misunderstanding, there was a miscommunication, it kind of, maybe you were different people coming from different ways, but at the end, it was like, oh, everything kind of fell into place and you were happy. I like those kinds of stories, the ones that make you, kind of tingle inside when you hear them, make you smile at the end. So I would say, probably that would be my ideal, and they seem more authentic because they do get into some of the messy part of the stuff, but then at the end, things work out.
My wife went through a time period of that here within like the last year where the world got so heavy. She was like, I got to escape into this world that is, kinder and more predictable and softer. So I totally get it. I get the appeal and I totally do. And in my mind, I'm thinking Romeo and Juliet, When Harry Met Sally. There's all of these little biopics of things, but they're so fictionalized. But it's a part of that. So at the end of this journey that you've been on, and beginning to collate another book, at this point in your life, everyone has a perception of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, everyone that gets the book, but ultimately you're the driving force. You run what we all see. What is your perception of you today? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm someone, I've always felt that I was confident, but I would say in the area of love, I probably wasn't as confident prior, and I think I'm more. I'm not as afraid to say how I feel or what I want. And I think that was the piece that was missing. It was more, not necessarily that, sometimes is it confidence, but I didn't feel it was my place, like don't rock the boat type of thing. This is the way it's supposed to be. And sometimes it's not. And that's okay. It's okay to say, things aren't working, can we try and fix it? And if not, make a decision to go separate ways. I think at the end of the day, you want to be happy. One of the things, and I kind of put into my book is, when my ex-husband, when he finally left the house, I remember my son was 13, 14 years old, and he was like, he says, I want the family to be back. He says, and I said, would you rather the family be back or would you rather be happy? And he says, I want to be happy. And so, that was that kind of defines it. You want to be happy.
So if anybody wants to pick up a copy of the book, they want to, get in line for the next book, anything and everything related to the book and what you're doing, where's the best place for people to go?
It's available on Amazon, so just go on there. The book is called Dicks I've Met Online. You shouldn't have any issue finding it. I believe it's the only one of that title. And I really that title I think I had from the beginning because it really, captures everything. The pictures, kind of referring to men as dicks and kind of some of them that were really jerks, as far as the way they acted and all that, as far as from my perception. So that's available there. And there'll be more. People can go to my Facebook, Instagram under Bren Marrick to find information as far as this podcast and when the other book will become available.
Wonderful. Bren, thank you so much for talking about your story. Thank you for taking a minute out today. Best of luck on this book, the next one that comes out. I really appreciate it.
It was great speaking to you today, too, Joe. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.